I don't make a lot of predictions, but I'm going to say this. Sarthak Shrivastava and Sudipta Biswas, the co-founders of FloWorks, we just had an amazing conversation. They're building these sales automation tools that are just incredible. It reminds me of some of the stuff we were doing on the sales trading desk back 15, 20 years ago, but they're doing it very specifically for sales. They've built a bespoke platform, really, but that includes a bespoke LLM that just does sales. So it's way more efficient, it's way faster, it's way more targeted than just using ChatGPT for this type of thing.
It's the joy of building that makes a great co-founder. It's the childish behavior that you have in you of basically tinkering and seeing that, hey, this making maybe this thing that we have been taught is the right way is maybe not the right way, and see if you can basically try to challenge the norm and say, okay, cool, let me try it out.
One of the reason probably I and probably all founders, right, start a company because they want to have an impact on the world, right? We are not doing it for the money, we're not doing it for the fame, honestly, right? And we really are doing it for the impact or have to have some positive change in the world.
Hi, this is Michael Waits, and welcome back to India GameChanger. We are joined today by Sarthak Shrivastava and Sudipta Biswas, the co-founders of FloWorks. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming to the show and for being just so flexible in doing this at this time. Before we jump into the main part of this conversation, let's give our listeners a little bit of your backgrounds for some context. And Sarthak, let's start with you.
Sure. Thanks for this, Michael. It's amazing talking to you. I've been a fan of your podcast for the longest, right? So yeah, a bit about me. I have always been an entrepreneurial child throughout my life. The way reason I say child is because that's what you need to basically succeed in this entrepreneurial world. So basically started off as a any like most Indian kids do, became an engineer. Realized that I'm going to be a terrible engineer, right? I really hated basically the labs, the work of that basically that I was doing in engineering, and I realized that my passion lies actually in building stuff, building businesses, building things that actually matter to people. So started, working at some of the largest Indian unicorns, like Blackbuck, for example, where I actually built out multiple business verticals, like basically their complete, North India, East India, trucking business I built out for them, right? And in that whole process, in the last few years, I learned that I think I'm one of the people that can do new things for the industry, for the company, for the world, and that's where my passion started. And 2021 is when I met Sudipta, my beautiful, amazing co-founder here. He is one of the sharpest minds that I had ever met, and I instantly knew that I wanted to start something up with him, and we started FloWorks in 2021, and rest is history. It's going great now, and I am loving the journey.
Sudipta, go for it.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Thanks so much for having us in the podcast. Uh, I listened very recently. I listened to some of your podcast and really amazing, right?
Thank you.
The best part is that everyone is having a conversation rather than a interview kind of thing. So
Nobody wants
we
to listen
hope
to an interview.
exactly. We hope we are going to have the same here. But yeah, a little bit about me. So I think starting from childhood itself, I was always interested in more the sort of math, physics, engineering side of things, like tinkering stuffs. And remember, like there have been multiple instances at my house when I was a child. I used to open up stuffs and fix them up, and I used to always tell my father not to call some technician. Like I would fix it up. Right? um, so yeah, that's how my journey started. Then went to engineering college, IIT Kharagpur, and there I was like, obviously engineering as a degree is a lot different than what we envision engineering to be, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, got interested into the engineering side of thing. Has also got interest in the AI and coding side of things. But this was, I think, back in 2015 or 2014. That was the time when AI was sort of trying to pick up, right? Bubbling, right? New and new. I think generative AI and all these different things, like the foundation papers are coming up, right? And that really hooked me into that, right? And initially, when I was in college, I thought like I'd pursue some sort of research career out of it. But after doing two research internship in college, I realized that this is a very slow path. I want to be on a fast lane, right? So yeah, starting my first startup back in 2018 in Bangalore, right? That time in Bangalore was like really booming. Like you had startups left, right, and center. I used to, see hoardings of upcoming companies like Razorpay, Swiggy, and I was like, okay, I have to do something like this, right? So the environment really got to me, if I'm being very honest, right? So started my first company back then, did that for 2 years, had decent success, and then went back to job for some time. Was building SME focused product at a company called ClearTax that builds GST filing softwares and tax filing softwares for businesses and people in India. Currently, I think they are global as well. So yeah, back in 2020, late 2021 is when I met Sarthak, and like we sort of aligned on many life philosophies and how do you really want to go about doing startups, what are the exit plans. We sort of aligned on, I would say, more than 90% of stuff, right? So thought that would be a great partnership and jumped into this ship for the last have been in this ship for the last 2.5 years now.
Well, and you haven't killed each other yet, so I feel like
Yeah.
it's been a good partnership. Can I ask you guys this before we talk about FloWorks specifically? So first of all, where are you based?
We are currently based out of Bangalore,
So
but
you're in Bangalore now.
currently in Bangalore, but we, last year we stayed about 6 months in US and SF area because a lot
Yeah.
of our customer happen to be there. We
So
generally do travel almost half time here, half time in US.
so I'm super curious about this, and I'll tell you why. So I live in Thailand, and recently, and send me emails if you're mad at me for saying this. Anybody who's listening, but like I've realized over time that like the startup ecosystem in Thailand is atrophying. Right? There's just nobody else to talk to. But even you guys said like you're in Bangalore in 2018 and 2019, and it's
Yeah.
just on fire. I feel like it's like the Indian version of Silicon Valley, and I mean that in the best possible way. But here's
Mhm.
the thought that I have, and I've been doing this. I've been podcasting in Asia for like 6 or 7 years now, right? And I include India in part of that. I broke out the India GameChanger into a separate show. But here's what I think: there are 1 point, pick a number, 3, 4 billion people in India. There are 300 million, 325 million people in the United States. At some point, the number of angel investors, the number of seed investors, the number of venture capitalists in and around Bangalore is going to rival what's happening in Silicon Valley just because India is going to grow naturally much faster over time. It just is. I mean, Sartak's laughing at me, but it just is. You guys spent it already is. I know. I'm not there. I want to go, right? But I haven't been there yet. But like you spent 6 months in the United States, in San Francisco. What do you get from it? Because I want to go too, right? Because I need, and I think part of the reason why a lot of people go is they want to like just suck in the environment and see what the energy is like, but also meet other really great entrepreneurs, right? Because there, like, you can literally trip over them in a coffee shop without even trying. Like, boom, oh, what do you do? Oh, I'm building $1 billion company kind of thing. But it's more than just the serendipity. It's the, hey, we're having a problem building out this part of our thing. Have you struggled with this too? And can you help me? And everyone's going to say yes. So I'm curious what you got out of being in the US. You can include the Y Combinator stuff in there, and then talk to me about building this thing in India.
Sure. Sudipta, okay, I'll take it up. Perfect. Yes, so exactly like as you said, India was booming in 2018. It's
Yeah.
not, I'll say, one of the players which is trying to catch up. It has caught up to start off, right? Markets are very different, definitely, right? Like India is a market where you find a lot of builders, but these builders are, mostly people who are working in a company, working towards a larger goal. Whereas, again, it's very simple, right? Like if 1.3 billion people in India versus 300 million people in US, you'll have one fourth of the, at least, just by simple
Yeah.
basic
Just by
maths.
simple math, you can have four
Yeah.
times the stuff, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry. Go ahead.
exactly right. Exactly right. So essentially, that's something which happens a lot in India versus Bangalore. The only difference that I'll say that you feel when you're basically in Bangalore versus in San Francisco that in San Francisco areas are much better divided. So what I mean by that is, if you're, let's say, near the Salesforce Tower, there you'll not find a lot of co-founders. Whereas you're in, let's say, Palo Alto, there also you'll not find a lot of co-founders. Salesforce Tower is for people who are execs. You'll find a lot of execs near there. Palo Alto is the place where you'll find a lot of VCs there. But there's a lot of places like, let's say, near the Bay Area, like near the essentially, let's say, the Bay Bridge, right? Coffee shops there are filled with basically entrepreneurs. Essentially, you find the right spots, be there, and you actually will find a lot of people and a lot of great community there. That's number one. Number two, where you basically see the same thing happening in Bangalore, you also see the same thing, right? Come to HSR where we are. Literally every company, every store, everything that is opened up is a startup. You'll find some or the other one basically building it out there. The major difference still being there is that you still find much more of employees here because there's number of employees are higher, but the same quality you can find here as well. And the better part about India is that India has always been, last 5 years or 10 years in this chasing mindset that I want to basically be a better or as good of an ecosystem as San Francisco is. So people are more keen to help you here. They're more willing to basically go that extra mile. Hey, can I try your product out? Okay, you don't have customers. Let me be your first person to basically try this out. Try basically start this whole thing out, right? And I like to add the most important thing, which basically also differentiated us, or like why our SF experience was so good. As you said, the Y Combinator, right? We were a part of Y Combinator's Winter 23 batch. That's 2 years back, and it was frankly one of the worst times to start something up. The
What?
market,
Why is that?
yes. So the market had like it had a amazing boom in 2021, 2022 start when it comes to VC money. Like essentially, there's a lot of money which was moving in. People are putting in a lot of money, in startups. But that's always a bad sign. The reason for that is simple. Like not also all those startups will succeed. And suddenly you have a curve where people have now pulling out the money. In fact, Feds had increased the interest rates in the US, and suddenly VC investing or which like angel investing was not so
I
lucrative.
think I think it's actually really funny that like a startup founder now has to be like a bond trader
Huh, but
because now you're like an
whatever
interest
makes
rate
sense.
trader, which is like being a bond trader. Anyway, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, it was
Definitely.
hard.
So 2023, winter 2023, or like basically January to I'll say March was, I'll say, one of the worst times to be in, because to be raising money at least. Amazing time to build because not a lot of startups are building and you suddenly have lesser competition. But money raising was really really tight. And suddenly, what happened was, because we got into YC essentially gave you this community effect. You suddenly have 250 amazing other companies similar to you, very, very similar stage, all trying and fighting to do the same thing, but collaborate in a very collaborative way. And suddenly that magic happened, right? The same thing that I'm talking about, basically near the Bay Bridge area, you have in a room of 250 people trying to do the same thing and trying to help you with the same thing. And that's it. Like YC is it for me is community. I literally can pick up a call right now, talk to an Airbnb co-founder, Brian Chesky, or anyone like Instacart co-founder, anyone that I want to, and they will be ready to help because that's the community, that's the power that
But
YC has.
was it really competitive in that room? Do you know what I mean? I'm using the room as a metaphor for the entire process, but like every person in there wants to succeed, and I can't believe there wasn't another team or two in there trying to like what's the right word? Turbocharge sales like you guys. I mean, we want to get to FloWorks as well. I'd love to get Sudipta's opinion on what YC was like as well. I feel like there's so much to talk about. But you know what I mean? Like there had to have been other guys and gals in there going, I think we can crush that team kind of thing. Like, did you feel that at all or no?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, see, YC invest in more than in our batch. It invested in more than 200 companies,
In your
right?
batch, they invested
In
in
your
more than 200
batch,
companies.
right? So there
Insanity.
definitely is overlap, right? We can't
Yeah.
help. we are not we are not particular, right? There are other companies that were sort of competing with each other. Um, now, honestly, at that stage, what really happens is that people are not really competitors to each other, even though they might have similar ideas, because they might be solving the same problem for different set of customers, right? Founders might have different insights on these different problems, right? And what really is a company is not just the idea, right? It is the idea, is the product, is the founder's expertise, is the founder's insight about that, right? So
It's the execution
combining
as well,
all of
by the way. Execution. I think you forgot
execution,
the
right?
most important thing.
Execution, right? Execution is really important, right? So combining all of them, right, being like having same idea, right, is like it's just one piece of the puzzle, right? So like personally me, I was not too much, I would say, uh, too much, I would say, on the defensive, on the defense, or too much fearful of other people in the company, in the cohort doing the similar things. In fact, in our batch it happened like there was a company that was doing similar things to us, but then
Yeah,
by the
I'm
end of the
forgetting the name
batch,
of the company. Do you remember the name of the company? Something light, right?
yeah, by the end of the batch, yeah, they sort of pivoted from that, right? And it happens, right? Even we also pivoted a bit from what we are doing in the batch, right? And a lot of companies definitely go through the similar journey. So yeah.
Did you? Can I ask you guys this? Right. So I have a co-founder as well. I'm building a business too. And I feel like I'm happy to overshare. Like the one thing that really gets me down is when people say they're operating in stealth. And I think it's because hopefully you're laughing with me and not at me. But the reason why I don't like it is because if you're so unconfident about your ability to out execute the other team, maybe you should just go home. It's kind of the way I feel about this, right? So I overshare. Even if I meet other people that are trying to build media companies, they're like, what do you do? I'm like, we do this, we do that, we do this, we do that. And this is why we do it. And this is why we think it works and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, I see. And the thing is, I don't feel like they can go out and copy me in a way that's going to disintermediate me. And you must feel that way, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, uh, if you're really, if you really fear about someone else copying you, right? I think that's a very, what do I say? That's not the right mentality or
I agree.
mindset, right? Because anyway, if you launch and if you become successful, or if you are on the path to successful, there will be
Yeah.
a lot of people that copy you,
Plenty,
right?
plenty.
And
Yeah.
honestly, if no one copies you, then probably you are operating in a very small market.
They're
That's
doing something wrong.
not really good place to be in, right?
Yeah.
If you're building something a lot of people are building, that's, I think, is a very good place to operate in, right?
Yeah. Michael, definitely one more thing to think about in this same way is you're not building the company for your own self, but rather for the public, the market, right? And if you are trying to do that in a silo, it will never be something that will happen because ultimately you have to, one day you have to go out and talk to someone. Like, does this make sense, right? And if you are just building it out, I think this works. I think I can build it out. You're actually doing the worst thing, worst service to your company because you never will get the feedback, right? And essentially it's simple, right? Like ultimately, ideas are not even worth the paper they're written on, honestly. Like that's my take on it. It's the execution. It's the execution, right? You essentially, execution is a process that is different for everyone. You cannot even fathom, like if you try to even tell everyone, anyone, like this is the complete process end to end of how I built a company. I'm sure that even if you try your hardest, you'll not be able to do it because it's so many softer levels that essentially go in, right? So every company is different, even though idea is the same, maybe the team is same or everything is the same as well.
So I want both of your opinions on this. Here's a thought that I have. I think that every great product gets built from customer feedback. Like I don't think there's an internal company, epiphany that says everybody needs this without knowing. In the sense that you go to your customers, you deliver them whatever your first product is, and they're like, "Okay, guys, this is great, and we'll use this. But do you think you can build this thing too to connect to that thing?" And that one is going to be the biggest success because everybody's going to need that. Are you finding the same thing too? Because I'm not in the software business per se, but I find that when my customers come to me and go, "That's a good idea, but couldn't we do this instead?" That's the thing that then ends up blowing up. You have the same experience?
Exactly. I think if you're not, I'll say, again, take an anecdote. If you're not uh, talking to your customers, and if you're not Steve Jobs, then you should you are doing something wrong. Like essentially simple, right? Like I
It's a
think,
very small Venn diagram, by the way.
yeah,
Go ahead.
very straightforward. Like either you are Steve Jobs, and then you do it, and maybe you don't need customer, referrals. You can do it so well, great. If you're not Steve Jobs, yeah, then talk to customers because they'll talk back to you, and give you the feedback. And one more thing there, you should also not. By the way, this is a very interesting post that Sudipta just put out. I think 3 days back about saying no to customers. Very important. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Basically, again, amazing line by Mr. Ford that I can give you the T. I think I forgot the model name. It
Model T.
was
The Model
Model
T.
T, right?
As
Yeah.
long as you want it in black. You can have
As
it in
long
any
as you,
color you
yeah,
want, as long
yeah.
as it's in black. Fair enough.
Exactly. Like so, you need to understand what you are willing to basically go and build out. There's always a set of things that you are okay to do, and if a customer is coming and saying that this makes sense, this is what I want, and enough people are saying that, then only go and build it out. Otherwise, it's like a double-edged sword, right? Like you want to listen to customers, not too much listen to the customers as well. Because if you listen to everything that a customer wants, you'll become a service company, and
Yeah,
like
exactly. And again, you don't want to be a service company, but my point was, if you get enough feedback from your customers saying that they want this thing, then it's probably the right thing to build. You know what I mean? But like you don't have to come up with all the ideas on your own, but you have to be in some kind of business. Otherwise, you have no reason to talk to clients. Yeah.
On that note, I think I just recollected an interesting moment here. So I think it was probably some YC partner that really told this, right? Is that if your product is perfect when you launch, then you have probably launched too late.
Exactly.
that
Way too
that
late.
So
helps.
if you're not spending 2 hours sitting with your customers, like solving bugs, then that means you have launched late. And also on the the Steve Jobs thing, right? So if you really listen to some of his interviews dating 30 years back or something, right, it's not that he would not take customer feedback, but the thing he would really emphasize is that you take customer feedbacks, but you understand from the customers the problems, but then you build the solutions yourself that would solve the problem. You do not ask, okay, what the solution would be from the customers, because in that case, the old famous analogy would be like they would want a faster horse
Right. Right. Right.
rather than a car.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Can I make this point too about Steve Jobs? You guys are probably too young to remember this, but the original like Mac Mini was something called the Cube, and they literally only sold like a few thousand of them, and then they pulled it off the market because it was underpowered. It was, the software wasn't great. It was just a terrible experience for people. I think the CD you kind of dropped in the top. I remember looking at it, and he rolled it out like, this is the most beautiful computer. He always said this, right? Like every computer was the most beautiful computer you ever had, but it didn't work. But the one thing he was great at is something that you learn as a trader, and that is you cut your losses as fast as you possibly can, and you let your winners run, right? And I think about this all the time. If your product is going like gangbusters, build more, do more with that. And if it's not working, cut your loss and move on. Okay, let's talk about this. You said you want to solve a problem, right? What is the problem you guys are trying to solve at FloWorks?
Cool. Sudipta, you want to take it up, or should I take it? Cool. We both. By the way, the reason why this question had this interesting, response was because lately we have been having so much demand coming in that we both have actually, jumped into the shoes of salespeople. Like we are like, okay, we'll both do sales. I don't care
No, I love it. I
how
love
well
it.
we serve it. So yeah.
I love it, and I want to warn you guys that the reason why you see me looking down is not because I'm ignoring you. It's because just before I jumped on the call, both Sarthak and Sudipta posted something on LinkedIn, and I want to talk about it because I actually think it's super cool. It's just like a different perspective on the same thing. Okay. So I want to talk about that. We closed 50 customers in 1 month. Anyway, tell me the problem you're trying to solve, and then let's talk about the back end details because I think what you guys wrote is kind of cool. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, cool. Um, so what we really are solving at FloWorks is that today we believe that, especially in the domain of sales, there are a lot of places where humans are involved, which can otherwise be automated or be taken up by an intelligent being, or let's say an AI, right? For example, let's say if you date back to 150 or 200 years back when industrial revolution really started, humans were doing a lot of manual works, which then machine came up and took up, right? And it really automated a large part. And what really happened is that, like, obviously the production of the whole world improved, right? So what I really believe is that today, if we can really automate, really sort of take up a lot of the efforts that humans are today taking up while doing the function of sales, right, then not only we can obviously save time and make salespeople more productive, but we can push the periphery of what these salespeople can achieve, right? So for example, like when AWS came, right, before AWS came, every software engineer had to know how to do DevOps,
Yeah,
right?
build their own
They had to
servers. It
know
was a major
exactly.
pain.
They're
Sorry, go
super
ahead.
hard, right?
Yeah.
Maintaining today, we build a website, you take it for granted, but that 15 years back,
Plus, you
building
had
a
to buy all the
website,
servers. Like, who had the money for that? Sorry, go ahead.
exactly, right? And as reading probably the 0 to 1 book by Peter Thiel, when PayPal, the first few orders came or something happened, right, their server went on fire, right?
Of
It was,
course.
And people are hosting servers literally in their bedrooms. It's really difficult. But then when that came in, it didn't mean that software engineers went out of job or something, but now they could really focus their energy on something that's truly taken the whole software ecosystem to a different level, right? uh, with sales as a domain, I believe similar thing is going to happen, right? With product like FloWorks, right? What they can do will now become much more enhanced, and the envelope of what they can do will be much more than what it's today, right? So yeah, so as a product, FloWorks is, think of it like an AI agent that can solve various repetitive and mundane works, and also creative works, right? That AI people, sales people today have to take up in order to do sales, right? Yeah, that's briefly what we're doing.
So can I say that it's the more conversations I have like this, the more it shocks me how what's the right word? Analogous it is to what we were doing on a sales trading desk at Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs like 15 to 20 years ago. What does that mean? The throughput that we had, right, and the compute we had wasn't as strong and as powerful as it is today. So we had way more servers to do probably the same amount of work. But we had a sales trader who was essentially a sales guy on a stock desk. And what we did was we built all these automated processes so that guy and that gal didn't have to go and check the closing price from yesterday and see what the stock holdings were for the other guy. Like all these kind of stuff was just there. So you could do, and that guy never got fired per se. He just turned into a different job, and his job was then giving that information to the buy side trader. Right. So we automated all these processes. So for me, when I watch what you guys are doing, and I wrote this down too, because I don't think you mentioned Henry Ford by accident, but essentially what you're building is, because what like Henry Ford's invention or innovation wasn't like building the car. He didn't invent the car. He invented the production line to make the cars faster. And to be fair, when he figured out like, could we make a blue one? We can if we automate the coloring part too. And you're basically building a production line for sales. So that all the back end stuff, meaning the color choosing, putting on the wheels, all that kind of stuff that Ford did in the 1920s or whatever it was, you're doing for sales. So that salesperson now can say, oh, I want to write a personalized email to Bob, but I don't know what Bob's been doing recently. But if Flo does it, Flo knows exactly what Bob's been doing recently because you can just tell it in 3 seconds to go out and check, and then it writes a personalized email. You may remember when we first did our prep call, I personalized it for you guys on purpose, right? So now that I know what you do, I'm like, I get it. But tell me what, like now tell me how it works. Now that we've established that I think you're building the production line for sales, tell me if I'm wrong. But if I'm right,
Sure.
tell me how it works now and how it's different.
Sure. So, Michael, the way it works out, if you think about, and it's exactly like that, right? Like if you think about any sales, especially B2B sales, because that's where you'll have the most profit. It's very, like what the essentially conveyor belt will have, right? A to B to C to D. You know the process. The process is very clearly defined in one way. If I basically break it down, the first part is prospect. You find out about your people that you're trying to sell to. You basically reach out to them, tell them what your service is, why it makes sense, and get them on a sales call. Very simple prospecting. The second part of that, by the way, there's very clear breakers there. The first breaker is the first meeting that happens with a sales rep or an AE. The second part of that comes in now managing that customer. Like sales in B2B especially do not close in one call, or
Nah,
they take 4 to 5 calls at the very least, right?
could be six
You need
months, yeah,
to,
but yeah.
yeah. So you need to remember that data. Like obviously I'm a sales rep. I'm doing sales for like 30, 40, 50, 100 people in a given time. Like I can't remember everything. So managing that whole information flow, managing that whole thing out, like the sales life cycle is what we say, becomes very crucial in the second part. And third part is afterwards, everything is done. Now you're at the end stage. You have sent the code, closing, finally closing the customer. So there's another meeting which basically happens. So there's very clearly two defined meetings. Meeting A, where you are initially doing the sales, multiple things in between, and then meeting B, which is where you are doing the final sales call, where you're closing the deal, signing off everything, and then you go to the onboarding stage. You give it up to someone in the success team, they manage it out. So very clearly, there are these three major sections of sales that come out in this whole, basically explanation. Now the problem here, as I was explaining to you, must have also felt that this is so operationally, intensive. So much of goes in. There's so many things that I have to do. Find out about Bob, for example, write that email, follow up with him multiple times on different channels, LinkedIn, email, everywhere, right? While basically maintaining the sanctity of my CRM. Then basically when Bob actually says yes to a meeting, manage out the calendar, figure it out. Then once the meeting is done, manage out the CRM, multiple sales calls, what should be the flow, how should I best close Bob, how should basically, I present my information. Is there someone else like Bob, like maybe, Rebecca, whom I had sold earlier, what was the thesis there, and
Right.
so on. And the whole ops is what we eliminate simply, right? We actually have a trained model. It's a generative AI model called Thor V2. And the unique part about this model is it's built for only doing one thing and one thing alone, which is sales. It is trained on sales data. It understands how to do sales. And the second part, which is why it's so unique and why people have been in the world talking about it, is because it does not hallucinate, which is one of the biggest challenges in generative AI. So yeah, I think Michael, you were saying something. Did I cut you off?
Yeah, I mean, you just mentioned so many. There's so many interesting things to talk about here, but let's talk about the things that people understand. Okay, so you've built a bespoke model that focuses on just doing one thing, right? We don't even need to go out and compare it to to OpenAI and GPT-4 or 4 point, whatever you want to call it, because it wasn't built to do what you're doing. It was actually built, in my mind, just to prove what was possible, and then to say to companies like yours, like, okay, we need bespoke tools to do this because this is way too general, right, for everything that you want to do, but also the information is too public. So, two things really. What does it take to build an AI model? Like, what are the basic components to build that model to do sales? Like, obviously, it's going to be faster and more efficient because it's only doing that one thing, right? That's all it's doing. It's not going out and doing anything else. It's not making bagels, right? It's not doing anything else. It's just doing sales. But on the other hand, how do you handle, and this is a little bit of a tricky question, right? But how do you handle the data management? Right? No one succeeds alone. That means no one salesperson is in charge of one client only. Right. So how do you persist the data in a way that maintains privacy, but still allows people to share it so that if I'm on vacation or if I'm on paternity leave, somebody can come in and go, I got it. And they don't have to ask the dumb question of like, when was the last time, we spoke to you and what was the last product? Because that's so annoying for a customer. It's like, you have a computer, you must know. How do you handle both of those things?
Right. Yeah. Um, I think maybe I can take the first question that you said, right? How do you build an AI model for this specific use case, right? Just for this, right? Now, when we really went to solve this problem, we understood one key aspect of this domain, right? That there are a lot of different sales tools that people are already using, right? They use CRMs like HubSpot, Salesforce. They use Gmail tools, emailing tools like Gmail, calendar tools like Calendar, right? And there are a lot of other tools that they use for prospect list and contact list and everything, right? Now, this is a very vast domain, right? So obviously we cannot build a system that can do all of it, right? So we thought, instead of building a model that can do all these different functions, let's build a model that can talk with these different systems, get informations from different system as and when needed, right? Push information into the systems as and when needed, all intelligently, right? So that is the approach, right? And that's what led us to build not a generic language model, right, but build a very specific type of large language model. It's called large language model, which is specialized for function calling, right? Now, function calling is nothing but the capability of a LLM to call upon different tools as and when needed. In this case, for example, CRM, LinkedIn data, Gmail, all these different tools, right? Now, obviously, the world knows that there have been very successful large language models of the last 2 years that came up, like GPT-4, Cloud, and this kind of things, right? Now, what these models are really good at, as I told, right, they're good at very creative language or text generation, right? You ask it to write a story, write a poem, write a content for your lesson, Facebook ad marketing. It does it really well. But when it comes to calling tools, external tools, is when these models are not reliable enough, even today, right? So what do you mean by so what is the reliability? So reliability is the ability to do same stuffs twice, same action twice on the same instruction, right? So today, if you have used ChatGPT, you know with the same prompt, you'd probably get two different email drafts, right?
Yeah, and sometimes it actually still asks you, "Here's one sample, here's another sample.
Right,
Which one do
right,
you like better?" And I'm like,
correct.
"What are you doing to me? I don't have time for this. Sorry, I'm using you to be efficient, not to like have a conversation with you." Anyway,
Right.
go ahead.
And that's actually one of the reason, why these kind of large language models like GPT-4 are not finding a lot of usefulness in workflow automations, right? When you need very high level of determinism, right? So let's say you have to update certain task in CRM, right? It's actually deterministic, right? You cannot put in wrong information. You cannot access information from CRM where, let's say, you do not have the permission to, right? So there are very specific data guardrails, determinism that language models need to follow, and that's what our model solves, right? And this is what the Thor V2 model, as Sato was mentioning, is expert at doing, right? And on top of that, in order to build this model, we had to re-architecture a large part of this model workflow and how data flows from, let's say, one model to another model, right? And instead of also taking up one single model to do everything, we actually have broken up the whole tasks, right? The whole sales operation task, as Sato was mentioning, into multiple smaller tasks, and have specialized models that perform those smaller tasks, right? That actually brought in a lot more determinism, lot more reliability into the flow, which was missing with existing approaches or LLMs, right?
Yeah, I mean,
I
this
hope
gets back
that
to the
answers your
production
question.
line thing that I was talking about. Sorry,
Exactly. Right.
maybe you don't want it to be, but it sounds if you break it down into its little component parts, when it gets to the point where it needs to do something, that function that you're calling only does that thing, and it knows exactly what to do, and it does it properly every single time. The same way when a car goes down a production line, it gets there and that bolt needs to be tightened. That machine only just tightens that bolt. It doesn't look over and go, "Do you need some help with the other thing?" It just does
Mhm.
that thing. Sorry, go ahead.
Exactly. Yeah, but that's a very interesting and apt analogy. Like, at least I haven't thought of it, but really great analogy, Michael.
Sorry. So, Sarthak, did you want to say something? Maybe you want to talk about the data, right? So, how do you do the data sharing side of this so people can support each other and yet not give away data that shouldn't be given away? How do you do the data management stuff? Because that's very complex too. And there's more data today than ever, and it's going to keep getting to be more and more. Yeah.
Yes. So I'll tell you the simplest reason and simplest way to basically manage this whole thing out, especially when it comes to data, is rely on the other softwares which are there. As Sudipta was saying, right? Think about it. We do not act alone when we're doing sales, right? And basically our solution, let's say Alicia, when we talk about Alicia, the SDR, she's basically our okay. So FloWorks has an AI SDR. She can do prospecting, end-to-end prospecting. The first part that I had talked about completely for you. Now, for doing that, it needs to basically connect to a database, let's say ZoomInfo or Apollo or any of the information database. Then it needs to basically connect to your LinkedIn, connect to your email, connect to your calendar, and connect to your CRM. Now, interestingly, all these systems, your Gmail, calendar, ZoomInfo, and CRM, let's say Salesforce, already has the data sharing network and the data sharing policy set up in it. So system is not doing anything out of the bounds. Let's say four people in a company are using the system. All the basically data sharing and all the different policies that were held true for all these large enterprise systems are also true for Alicia. Alicia is just an external AI system which is now doing the job that the human should have been doing. That's it. So that's very simple. We don't screw with the structure of a company of data sharing and everything, and basically the system gives out the right responses all the time.
So, what are the reactions? So, first of all, Alicia, does Alicia work for everybody? And what does it look like to the client? Do you know what I mean? Because this is maybe a year or two ago experience, but I would get emails from AI agents, and it would really bum me out. I'm like, I know you're not a person, and I know you don't have a name. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So,
So
so how do you fix that? Because if I got an email from you that was AI generated, I'd probably believe it more. I'm just talking about my own opinion, but I'm wondering how that works. In other words, does she just go out externally and get information, give it to me, and then I act on it? Okay, go ahead.
So, Michael, as I said, like it's exactly so. It's a simple system that Alicia follows, or even thought anything that basically Flowers is building out is following, is basically is trying to mimic a human behavior. Simply put, we provide the agents that we provide. The difference between our agents and the greater world agents which are there available in the world is that ours, we call them as AI employees, and they are great at mimicking the human behavior. So, what is the human behavior, right? Let's say I wanted to send something out to you, Michael, as an email or a LinkedIn message. What I'll do, I'll basically go through your LinkedIn, I'll go through your podcast, I'll go through your social profiles, find out the relevant information which is there, find out a conversation starter, put that in as the first line or maybe the first sentence or the first paragraph. Now, the interesting part is I'll utilize the same information and the information that I have of whatever I'm selling, and that's where the job of a great salesman comes in, right? I'll combine these two information and create a value prop that makes sense to you. So, for example, the great analogy that we have for basically doing sales, right? Sell me this pen, right? You sell this pen to everyone after understanding what they're going through. So let's say for Michael, I was saying, hey, it's great that you're taking all the notes and everything in an iPad that I was seeing right now, but pen and paper do feels very very different at times. Maybe that is something which will be amazing. And hey, you have right, perfect. Maybe to Steve Jobs or maybe to Elon Musk, I'll have a different value prop. But that's the value that basically Alicia just goes to the second part, which is use the initial information that it found about you over the internet, larger internet, your Twitter, your LinkedIn, your Facebook, your basically Medium, and utilize that to, after creating the initial starting point, create a personalized value prop.
Okay. So
Then
this gets back to
end
one of
with
the
the
this
reviews.
gets back to one of the posts that Sudipta made, right? It starts with emails are dead. I love this because I know the way LinkedIn works. And I kind of knew you didn't mean that, but I wanted to find out why, which is why it was such a great post, by the way, because you did it. You win, right? You win. And you have just enough space between emails are dead, so it's blank, and you look like, okay, I have to press the more button so now I can see it. I love the strategy. It worked on me. No, but I love it. I love it. I love it. But individual emails are dead. I mean, let's be fair. You were trying to make a point. The idea is the email that you've always been sending, like as we used to say, like this is not your father's Oldsmobile. This is not your father's email either, right? So let's just talk about these two things. You need to understand them. Emails work at scale, right? And they need to be hyper personalized. So tell me how that works and how you like scale just enough so it goes to the right people, but doesn't scale so big that it ends up being spam, right? Because that's the balance you have to find. And how do you personalize it in a way that feels real, right? It doesn't feel like, I posted about the Red Sox last week, but I'm actually a Yankee fan kind of thing. Like, how do you protect against that as a problem?
Right, right. Um, so, when we really wanted to solve this problem, right, we wanted to answer very few fundamental questions, right? Why is it that emails are not working anymore today, right? And part of the reason we found is that, probably 80% of the emails we receive are like pure blank AI generated without any thought put into each other, right? So think of it this way. Let's say you are having conversation with someone else in some social setting, right? You'd want to strike a chord initially, right? You don't want to just say, hey, hi, good morning, how is the weather, right? That's really bad way to start, right? Today what's happening is that probably 80% of the emails that you see that we receive, right, are spammy, right? And that's the number one reason that emails are failing, right? Then we thought, like, if we solve this problem fundamentally, if we make emails less spammy, right, if we make emails as personalized as, let's say, some other person would write it after, let's say, researching about you 30 minutes, right, or 30 minutes over the internet, right, then that really would solve this problem, obviously at an individual level. But if the whole world moves toward that direction, even though it's AI generated, you'd know, right, that it's an email that has value for you, right? Even though it's AI generated, right? But at the end of the day, you really, obviously don't care about whether it's someone has written it, or someone has handwritten it, or computer typed it, or someone has AI generated it, right? You have to derive some value from that communication, and that's really what matters, right? And that's the approach we have taken, right? We have tried to mimic as much human behavior as possible while writing a good emails, right? Now, coming to the scale, right, we are very mindful of that. And even in our product, right, we actually do limit people as to how many number of emails personalization they can do, right? Because if we don't do that, right, it would just open a can of worms. And if the campaigns do not perform and anything, right, people would come back to me, right? And overall, that's also not a good world to be in, where people are just writing AI generated emails left, right, and center without putting much thoughts in it, right?
I think I can take up an anecdote here, just to explain this point. A few of the customers, so we are in this space where suddenly this new word has popped up, AISDR. This everyone, like, there's tens of companies which are basically claiming that they can do so much well. Right? And essentially, what is happening with all of those solutions is that it's eating up on the TAM, or total addressable market that a customer might have, or a product might have. And interestingly, in the last few days, I and Sudipta have seen so many customers come to us saying that they feel that the AI SDR worked. They used some random AI SDR, it worked for them for a short while, but then it just started eating up on the TAM very quickly. Essentially, it's like too much of anything is not good, right? Like if you let
Yeah.
someone say, okay, cool, you can use your email, it's your LinkedIn, do 1,000 prospecting a day, they'll be able to do it because AI can do that. But that's not good. Google will mark you as spammy. It will basically be lesser personalized because it will not take effort in basically creating, like, essentially, even for an AI system, right? It will take some time to create that personalized email, right? If you are doing 1,000 emails in basically 4 hours, the system doesn't have enough time to basically do those computations for you. Plus, it's also spammy and everything is going bad. So what happened for these people was that suddenly they had, like, okay, I'll send out 4,000 emails in, let's say, 1 week. I get amazing, 200 meetings from them, or like 50 meetings or 10 meetings or whatever number of meetings from them. But suddenly my time is now over. I don't have more people to send out the email next week. And that became one of the biggest challenges in this market. That's the biggest problem that I have seen or I've heard from the customers who basically start using us. So the initial thing that we were trying to do was, okay, number one, scale will remove it right now from your mindset to start off with. In fact, today also we were talking to one customer. They were like, we have these many, now we'll do 10,000 emails, 15,000 emails. We're like, no, you don't need that.
Yeah.
You can get the same result, because ultimately the thing that matters to you is the number of meetings that you're getting in, not the
Right.
number of emails that
You
you're
can't
sending.
do 10,000 meetings, no matter how
Yep.
much,
Yeah,
like, just in your
yeah,
lifetime, you can't do it. And that's
Yeah.
the balance that I
exactly.
was talking about before.
Right.
I
And
want to make it.
on that note, maybe just want to plug in another point, right? So it's not just the email that our product AISDR is specialized in, right? Even before sending out an email, you actually need to identify who the right person would be that would actually want to receive that email, right? This is where our AI actually kicks in before even sending the emails, right? So if I like in our product, right, if you today write your product description and want give a very general understanding of a product, our AI can actually suggest very good ICPs and who would be the ideal customer
What's an
persona who would,
ICP?
yeah.
What is an ICP?
So an ICP is like it's an acronym for ideal customer persona. It's basically like who are the set of customers who would benefit from using the product, right? So our AI can suggest that, and would also suggest a list of people or contacts that can actually find your product and service useful, right? And once you zero onto that limited set of customers or contact, then even if you send the emails to them, whether AI generated or personalized or handwritten, it'll work well, right?
And not just
So
emails, by the way, LinkedIn as well. That's like a very
yes,
important thing that also people
Yeah.
miss out.
Yeah.
Like our
right.
LinkedIn is an
solution.
amazing prospecting engine.
Amazing tool, amazing
Just
prospecting tool,
amazing.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I wanted to make a point about personalization, just from my own experience. I feel lucky because let me give you a couple of examples. Right, I was born in California, raised in Massachusetts, lived in New Jersey, worked in New York, went to summer camp in New Hampshire and Maine, and lived in Tokyo, worked with the Korean team, lived in Hong Kong for a bit. All these little things means that every time I talk to somebody, if they're like, "Oh, my cousin's Korean," I'm like, my brother's wife is Korean. Like, I can just make any kind of connection to them. And once you do that, you have that idea of, like, that personalization, right? And its impact on relationship building, I think, is so important, and so few people like understand how that works. And if you can automate that process as well, it's just a huge win, I think. No?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's exactly what Elisa is trying to do.
I, I need to meet Alicia. Can I ask you guys another question? There's so much to talk about here. Everybody lives in this in a world of skepticism, right? They're like, yeah, maybe you say that your product does this or whatever. And that's for everybody, not just for you guys, right? What is the normal reaction you get? What are you typing? No, what is the normal reaction when you do a demo for someone who's skeptical? That's what I want to know. We're like, you can see the skepticism in their eyes, and you're like, yeah, this is not gonna. And then they're just like, uh-oh. Do you know what I mean? Like, what is that like?
Yeah. So I think I can take it up very interestingly. I think I talked about this in my post, by the way. Um, yeah. So it's very simple. We go in as a team knowing that people will be skeptical. So don't get off the game by seeing people skeptical, because that's the moment to shine. And we just basically show them the product works. That's it. And generally, the reaction there that they have is, "Oh my god!" Their eyes get wide. They're like, "Okay," and I'm like, "Yeah, this happening. They think this is now happening for thousands of your prospects. How do you think it will work out?" And their answer is, "How do we sign up?"
Yeah,
And then there's the
exactly.
process. It's very
That's so
simple like
great. That's so great. So can I ask you guys this? We've been at this for almost 50 minutes, and I don't want to take up more of your time, but I do want to leave an open invitation to both of you guys to come back, because I think the product is going to continue to grow and iterate. But you remember when we did the prep call, I said that, educated and hardworking people can be good at anything, right? But to be great at something, you have to care. And I think that the one thing that people are going to hear in your voice is the caring, and also like the joy of building something that people can actually, like, you're both smiling. It's weird, right? There's this joy in going, we built this thing that actually works and that people actually need. And it changes, when you build a product that so many people can use, it doesn't just change your own lives or the lives of the people inside your company. It's like every sales development representative, this is the SDR you were talking about earlier, their life changes as well if they understand how to use the technology. And what that means is that, like, their family's life change. Like, it's just this massive flow of change. How does that make you guys feel? Like, is there an inherent happiness of, like, we're not done at all yet, we're not even close to being done, but we feel like we're building something that has impact, and that's kind of fun and cool.
Yeah, I think one of the reason probably I and probably all founders, right,
Yeah.
start a company because they want to have an impact on the world, right? We are not doing it for the money. We're not doing it for the fame, honestly, right? And we really are doing it for the impact, or have to have some positive change in the world, right? And this doesn't just come from the customers, right? For example, currently we are employing 16 or 7 people in the company, right? Sometimes when I think that I am employing 17 people, right, that really gives me goosebumps, right? So I'm probably changing the life of at least 17 times 2 or 3, like that much people, like counting up the number of family members and everything. So so impact is really everything, I believe, right? And that really wakes me up every morning and pushes me to work towards it, right? Yeah, that's my
Sartak, I'll
take.
give you the last word.
I'll do two things. Number one, definitely it makes a lot of sense. It's the joy of building that makes a great co-founder. It's the childish behavior that you have in you of basically tinkering and seeing that, hey, this making maybe this thing that we have been taught is the right way is maybe not the right way, and see if you can basically try to challenge the norm and say, "Okay, cool, let me try it out." And actually having that courage to say, "No, this is not the right way, maybe I'll try out a different way," is the most important thing for any co-founder, right? If you can do that, like, I say simply put, if you can start playing the game and be long enough in the game, you'll find something, because the world is filled with inefficiencies, filled with
Agreed.
problems, right? You'll
Agreed.
find something.
Agreed. I want to give you this, and then I'll let you guys go. But I completely agree with you. You have to be really persistent at trying to find a problem to solve. And if you can't find a problem to solve, I think it's on you, because there's so many problems out there. Pick the one that you think you're going to be the best at solving and go and do it. And your chances of success are just so much higher. Okay, look, I will let you guys go. You were both awesome. Sarthak Shrivastava and Sudipta Biswas, the co-founders of FloWorks. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. I had a blast. I normally wait to say this until after the call's over, but thank you so much, guys. You were awesome.
We just, as we said, like, we love the product so much, we cannot let any opportunity to showcase it not get by
Let
us.
go
So
of.
we did
Awesome.
that.
Awesome, awesome, awesome.
Great having you and great talking to you, Michael. Thank you so
Awesome,
Yeah,
much.
guys. Okay.
absolutely enjoyed the last 1 hour, Michael. Thank you so much for
Well,
having us.
thank you.